usually during Art Basel, which was canceled, of course. Oh, okay. Oh, we start over? Okay.
Easy. That's no problem. We
Yeah.
can do over.
Cool.
All right. Okay.
Just
So
like that.
yeah. So so for the folks that are watching the live stream, we're live now. We thought we were live a minute ago, but you know that's how it goes when
We
you
had a
try.
lovely conversation.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to repeat exactly what Troy said, and Troy's gonna try to repeat exactly what I said. I'm just kidding. No, we'll get started.
See how well you listen.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so I'm Nate Polash. I'm one of the organizers for Cafe Scientifique Twin Ports. Really excited to be down here today at the Embassy Temple Industrial Headquarters with Troy Rogers. And today we're talking about Sub Superior. And Sub Superior is a festival that's dedicated to music and art and tech and water. And so yeah, I'm here with Troy. I'm gonna let Troy sort of introduce himself, tell a little bit about his role with Sub Superior, how he got involved, and yeah, thanks for being here. So
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Nate, and thanks for teaming up with us. It's a natural pairing, I feel like, with what both of us and our audiences are up to. And so Sub Superior is an underwater music and art festival. Not strictly underwater. There are events that happen below, above, and next to the water. But largely the focus is on underwater sound. And so the way that that this became a thing is, first off, I guess I should say I'm a musician, I'm a composer, sound artist, musical roboticist. I perform as Robot Rickshaw locally and touring, and the whole idea for an underwater music fest came up when I was visiting one of our guest artists who's in town for this year's fest, Uri Koish. And he has a foundation in Miami called the Feta Foundation that puts on experimental concerts and performances. And for over 10 years, I've been going down there almost every year during Art Basel for what's evolved into the Street Festival. So it's a street performance, street music. And during the pandemic, that wasn't happening, 2020. In fact, we all thought nothing would happen, but there was a little window where everybody was able to test, and an idea came up that year to, I guess the impetus was a friend of ours and wonderful performer, Margaret, a flutist, couldn't play her instrument. And so a concert was set up called The Breath of Death, which was, Margaret was in a cellophane wrap pavilion so that she couldn't infect anyone while playing, and it was in the Miami Beach Botanical Garden, so that it was all outside in the open air. And for that I brought the sousaphone boat down, which is a small watercraft with a sousaphone and a glockenspiel and other automated instruments aboard. And so that was part of it. And so during this is, it's a long wind up to it, but so I sort of had an unofficial artist residency as part of this at a marina in Miami Beach, right next to, just super yachts and a bunch of things, but a beautiful park, you're looking out across the bay at Miami. And we're sitting there, and I'm tuning up the sousaphone boat one night, and our friend Nicole, who's a composer, she runs a wonderful venue called The Bridge in Miami, and she said, as we're sitting there, there's this underwater music festival in the Keys. I've always wanted to go. We should go. And we started talking about it, and we didn't know exactly what it was, but our minds as composers like, wow, what does it mean to make music underwater? What if we blah blah blah? And then all of a sudden, two dolphins swam by right by the boat and by where we were sitting, and we're like, what if we just made music for dolphins? Not, humans are just maybe bystanders in it, but we really focus on that. So that was an idea. And last summer we ended up going down to the festival in the Keys together, which was enlightening because it wasn't at all what we thought. It was, we thought, because there were some pictures of people with wild looking copper and brass underwater instruments and costumes and things. It turns out that festival, those are, part of the visual display, but not necessarily meant to be played, or people hadn't even necessarily tried playing them. It turned out, which was to us, we're like, what does it sound like? And so we the festival usually takes place out on a reef off of Looe Key, and there had been a storm, so that wasn't happening. And a cool thing about it is it's tied in with this reef restoration research center where we learned all kinds of about coral reef restoration. They have a coral sexy room where they've kind of reduced reproduction time for elkhorn coral from like 30 to 7 years. I mean, really amazing effort. So that was super cool. And then the festival itself, which would normally be on this reef, have in this pool. And I think, it was one of those years everybody wanted to be on the reef. And so when it was done, everybody kind of left, and we were still in the pool and just taking it in. And they're like, well, if you want to stay, you just have to sign a waiver. So we stayed, and we had brought all kinds of a carload of things to try out underwater: fabrics for visuals and instruments, squeaky toys, electronic instruments, speakers. And we played in the pool that day. And everybody who came in, because it was next to a hotel or something. And so there were people who were using the pool. Everybody who came in interacted and had a great time, because they had, whether it was playing a shaker underwater, or we tested out playing tubes, kind of like didgeridoos under the water, and singing, squeaky toys. That's where we discovered that they're amazing underwater. The reeds, if they're reed based, the reeds fill with water and the pitch drops, and they get really slow. And so they actually become a single element of what's called a hydraulis, which is normally organs, whether they have fipples or reeds, are using the air as resonators and as the turbulent fluid that's going through them. Hydraulis does the same thing with water, and so that's what we were rediscovering with squeaky toys. So in any case, that happened, and then last summer, this was in early July, and in August, it was like, you know what, we're just going to do a Sub Superior. We're just going to call it, and last year, nobody was able to travel here, but we did a couple performances under the water that we can talk about further, but basically just a couple things. And we had planned it for a week because we knew you can't count on the weather. You never know, and all the conditions, everything. And it turned out we really kind of got 2 days that were suitable. The wind was really high. I think there was some storms early in the week, and so it was kind of toward the end, Friday and Saturday, that we had a couple events, and that's kind of what kicked it off.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. So you got a couple good days last year on it to start testing some stuff out. I mean, my first question to you, we got some questions prepared here, but my question, spontaneous question to you is, like, did anybody get electrocuted right away when you're in the water? Maybe that's a cheesy question right away, but I'm picturing throwing these electronics. Yeah.
It's a reasonable question. We try not to let that happen. It's a goal. Most, I don't know, some of us kind of enjoy at least slight electric shocks. I kind of dig that, but then oftentimes the fun stops prematurely when like when things short out. And so of course you are trying to shield things from the water. And so the first thing is, if we want to listen to sound underwater and project it above the water, whether it's live or recorded, we're using hydrophones, and it's possible to make them fairly cheaply with simple components, piezo contact mics, basically just sealed in hardware store kind of surplus electronics and hardware store kind of materials. And we found that especially if you configure them in a certain way, they're very sensitive, and so you could hear the sounds of when someone steps in the water. All the rocks are very defined, the vessels in the background. I mean, the whole time, anytime we're going to talk about underwater sound, I'm going to think about a previous Cafe Scientifique this spring with Rosalind talking about, and one of her papers, she talks about how Lake Superior is a song of vessels and ice. And so those vessels were really in the background. You're hearing that noise floor with the mics. But so one thing is, yeah, there's those are sealed. Sometimes it turns out over time you're using them a lot. They short out. We did have so last year the first performance was by Raw Space. Pete Biazzi, who is immediately, like, when he heard about it, was like, I'm going to do an underwater lithophone set. I'm going to have a snorkel, and I'm going to just go hard with these rocks until I can't, and or something in that spirit. A lithophone is any instrument that uses rock as its resonant body. Well, some of the first instruments were probably lithophones, just stones that were tuned and set up kind of like a xylophone to produce different pitches, right? Or also probably even before that, just hitting two rocks together. Those are, so we were, and of course on the shore, the rocky shore, near just down the from Perkins, the whole rocky shore on the Duluth shoreline, Leif Erikson up to Brighton, tons of wonderful rocks to work with, and so those sounds were there. But this year, so there was no danger. We had sealed hydrophones and we had rocks. And this year, originally he was going to reprise that set, but at the very last minute he said, actually, I'm going to play an acoustic guitar underwater, but it's going to have a pickup, and my guitar tech says it's passive, it should be fine. And then I was like, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I think knowing what happens when the contact points of the electrical contacts get exposed, like usually there's some shorting. And so, but he did it, and I don't think he got electrocuted. I think the water was super cold, and so he thought he had broken a finger in the performance, but no electrocution. Yeah.
So you touched on a couple of the other things that I was interested in, and I think others would be interested in, which is, sort of, what are some of the, challenges and triumphs of trying to do this thing? So you mentioned, being under the water, obviously there's the huge tech challenge with, sort of amplifying and getting things under the water and protecting things and safety. And yeah, I'm curious to hear about like any specific, like, this worked out better than we could have possibly imagined, or exactly how we imagined, or this worked out absolutely, because a lot of this is new. And so, yeah, so some of the triumphs and challenges, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, for sure. Those are, yeah, of course there are, ideally both. We don't want it to be too easy. Like, we don't learn if we don't fail. And so we want a little bit of that opportunity, which they abound, it turns out. And it's hard to say, like, I can't think of something that was like, oh, that was just why did we do that? All of it so far has, thankfully been learning. But I can say that one of the things that happened on Monday is we had a plan. One of the performers, well, a couple things happened actually. The first performer that night was Diegetic, and Kevin was doing an underwater ambient set, and he had done rehearsals in lake and everything else for a period of a couple weeks, and sound tests, sound checks. He took it on as a project and decided to just run with it and test it all on his own, which is great. Just kind of like this personal exploration. And so he had his electronics sealed, and he had been in the lake, and he was in for a long time, like the week before. But then, of course, we got an upwelling with the wind shift, and suddenly on Monday, the water temperature was in the 40s. And so he jumped in, and, wisely, because he didn't have a wetsuit or anything, he's like, I'm not going to do it. So he did it on the shoreline, and it was right next to the water. We had the water sounds accompanying it. It was kind of nice, though, so that's a change to the plan. But what was nice is there were some kids in the audience who kind of came up and got to interact with the setup. And so it was ended up evolving into a completely different, kind of performance situation than planned. But it was nice. And then a little bit after that, Brian Pfeiffer, who's a percussionist and licensed diver, he was planning to do, we were syncing a drum we didn't know at first. It ended up being a drum set. We didn't know which percussion instruments we'd use, but we did basically a full drum kit. And the plan was he was going to be in scuba gear and under the water enough that people could still see if they were sitting on shore, but also enough that it was really underneath. And he had a dry suit and everything else, but didn't have enough on his hands. His hands just froze up. And so that too we did standing. And it was a good thing because I've never mic'd a drum kit underwater before. And so I was assuming that it would behave in the way we've heard other similar instruments behave, where proximity would translate through the water. It really didn't. You have to kind of close mic each drum. And so I was in the water holding those, and it became kind of this duo of like, okay, what works miking? So it's all, this experimentation. A triumph is, I had a theory from some of the experience we had done that, it seemed like, okay, we can play, like, putting a clarinet reed in a solid tube and playing that in the water works, and everything gets bubbleized, and it's kind of interesting sound-wise. So brass instruments should work. I mean, it's harder because you need a lot more pressure because you're playing against the weight of the water that you're pushing. So depending on factors, that can increase. And so with a brass instrument, it's even more because you have more surface area. But I brought a baritone out, and we did a test for the first rehearsal of the Sub-Superior Brass Band, which is an underwater brass band. And the sound for the contact mic. So what happens is and we'll call it, this is a technical term, bubbleization, is, of course, you're expelling air through the bell of the instrument. Well, on a brass instrument, that bubble is much larger, and so as it, is shifting in the water and passing, it creates this flanging. So people were describing that sound as like early Pink Floyd, and it had a kind of a really unique sound that was pretty cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. Yeah. So you mentioned, okay, so we talked a little bit about some of the challenges, some of the triumphs. I guess, and we've talked a little bit about the tech. Those are some of the things we wanted to cover here today. I guess, you personally, are there particular parts of the festival that you are most looking forward to at this point? Are you performing at all? Are you more organizational at this point? But and regardless of performing or not, what are you the most looking forward to try out? Whether it's a performance or trying a certain piece of tech, or
Right. Yeah. There's well. The first question, I've decided not to do some things I was planning or hoping to do, partly because especially given the water temperature, not everyone wants to be in it, and we don't really have like an audio tech crew. I end up doing most of the audio teching, and so you really have to be kind of available and there to do that, and willing to get in the water, and I'm willing to do that. And so I don't think the sousaphone boat is going to make it out, because once I'm on that, that's, you're on a boat. It's its own experience. But it's all a performance. This right now is a performance, the whole thing. So to me, it's a holistic kind of a collaborative conception where there are end up unavoidably being performative elements that are that just happen, because it's not a there's no real professional practice yet around like miking a drum kit becomes that you're a performer when you're doing that, which is always true with productions too, but maybe especially so in these unique settings that are wild and kind of less easily controlled or predicted. I would say that I'm looking forward a lot to what's going to happen tomorrow. We take it day by day, and we've said this a lot. I mean, we changed what we were going to do for this moment because originally we had thought, like, oh, it'd be great to do some, either a talk or talks, present things, research about the lake in the water, and have it projected through underwater speakers where you would be able to lay and listen to it. And I hope we get to do that in a future year. but we shift day by day because of obviously safety concerns, but just enjoyment. Of course, we want to. These are the kind of mo is and the expectation is just prepare for the audience wise participants is prepare for a great day at the beach and some surprises, and that way it's hard to be disappointed when you're out next to the lake or on the water and then something interesting happens. And but all that being said, we have there are a number of convergences that are happening tomorrow that are exciting. We have two guest artists that we'll maybe get a chance to talk to in a little bit. But they're Uri and Jen are together form the Committed Duo, and the Committed Duo. I won't even. I'll let them talk about what that is. But it's a project that they've brought here, and they've also brought. Uri has a piece called "The Lake" that we've been wanting to stage that he did in Vermont, I believe, where people are participating. They're led. It's a sort of participatory sound walk and sensory walk where you are able to be blindfolded and sort of led through a forest to the lake. And so the thought for this is we're going to do it toward the end of Park Point tomorrow. And there's going to be a convergence where we have, it's required the creation of a floating platform. And this is actually something we've been dreaming of doing for a while as part of Subsuperior and as part of what the embassy does. And the idea is this floating platform. It's a regular hexagon, 5 feet per side, so 10 feet long at its peak, at its longest diameter, and the idea, so it's serving a purpose tomorrow. It's floating something into the performance, and but this is cell zero of what we're calling hexis, and hexis is an autonomous floating state consisting of these cells of regular hexagons that are tileable. So we're actually this is one of our first public times saying it, but we invite you to enter Hexis, the never alone star floating state, and become a Hexis homesteader. They're very inexpensive to create. We're going to release the specs as sort of an open source thing so people can build their own and then sort of build on this as a floating platform. So I'm excited about what's happening tomorrow because, one, this idea is getting launched. Two, we have two wonderful performers, musicians who are going to do some fantastic things, and there's a convergence of those elements that I think people are going to enjoy quite a bit.
So, couple more questions. One of them is, so we've mentioned the embassy a little bit here. Do you want to take a moment and just talk a little bit about what the embassy is? I know that,
and I really, when I was talking about the genesis of Subsuperior, that component is a key component that's just so obvious as we're sitting here to me but I thank you for the opportunity to talk about that, because the embassy is the kind of provides the infrastructure that's able to generate Subsuperior, because it's sort of very much in line with what the embassy does. The embassy is a friendly local art cult for aspiring cult leaders. So we're all cult leaders here, and so we are, everyone who enters the embassy, if you're a part of it, a creative part of it, you create your own rituals that we participate in, and you help other people create their own rituals. Subsuperior happens to be one of these rituals, one that was an idea, and so we have some studio space and have a collective workspace and organize often pop-up kind of guerrilla events, and for Subsuperior it really became clear this year. I was out of town, and several of our members, Daniel, took, was like, all right, I get it. I get the idea. Like, because it took a while to kind of understand the kind of scope and the nature of what Subsuperior is and could be, and so developed a whole website and social media campaign around it. Emily Koch, who's a wonderful artist, designed our logo and a towel. And oh yeah, and here's the we have a towel. This is so it's got the logo. They're available. We still have some for $50. You do want this? It's gorgeous. Um, and and all these things happened while I was away, and sort of like so. There's this really wonderful collaborative, community supported. We have a lot of people who are supporters of the cult and will turn out to help in various ways. And that, I mean, that's the spirit of it, without delving too far, down the rabbit hole. But that's the essence, is that it's creating it's something that's designed to generate and perpetuate fresh kind of community and community creative endeavors. Yeah.
Um, so okay, so we talked a little bit about the embassy. We've talked a little bit about some of the events. So I guess like for the folks that are coming out to this, the folks that are invited out. So we'll, maybe we can share some specifics with everybody in terms of like the website and all that, like at, either following up from here. But so two sort of questions. The first one is, what do you hope that individuals that come down sort of take away from the event? What do you want folks to walk away from?
Yeah. Um, you know, the in some way it's not a huge expectation. It's just that they're I feel like most of the people who are probably attending are already lovers of the lake, or it's a force that we can't avoid. Obviously, it's something that's a backdrop and a playground and an important, for the whole ecosystem and everything else. So we all know what Lake Superior represents to us in this region. But to be able to go there and enjoy that in its state and perceive it in a new way, perhaps to hear things that are already happening there, and we're trying to everything we're doing is intended to be of course leave no trace. But we even we started with a trash pickup on the beach, and so really that appreciation, that respect, but that wonder, that sense of wonder, which is there, I think, always. It doesn't need us to do that, but hopefully the spirit of the thing is such that there's a little enhancement to that might leave one with new questions or new ideas or something like that. And I would say everything that flows from that is gravy. So yeah.
The second part of that question is letting people know where to go and when if they want to come down. So yeah.
So we will, I should say, all the information. We have a couple days left after this. We go through Saturday. We put out a daily communication kind of blast. The main clearinghouse is our website, which is www.theembassy.love. That's our main website, and then if you just attach a /sub SUB to that, it gets you the Subsuperior component. So pretty easy. And we're Subsuperior on Instagram. We have a Facebook public event for Subsuperior, so I'm sure you can search all those avenues and find it. So that's just to say that you can get the details for tomorrow and Saturday there. If you we have a mailing list too from the website, and then but I can say that we just did a site visit with our visiting artists, and we had a plan for. Because of the nature of the sound walk and the idea of this convergence of forest and lake, in my mind, the first place that I thought of is past the airport at the end of Park Point in the old growth forest there. Lovely spot to walk, and that's still a possibility. But rain came in. it's been, as the whole reason we're here right now. And it was it was like, oh, we'll do it, but then it really was blasting, and so we decided to wait it out. And I kind of started driving back here, and we stopped because the sun came out, because it's been like that all day. The the lake was splitting the weather and moving, as it does. And in stopping, Uri, the sun came out, and he went and walked down this path, and he's like, actually, like, what about right here? And it's kind of right past the beach club before the airport. There's a little curve there, and there's a pathway to the beach. And so we're thinking about that. Again, that's why I say check tomorrow, because we're going to do another site visit after this, and we're going to do some depth checks. We got fitted for wetsuits today, the performers and myself, so that we can manage to do what we're planning to do. But in any case, be prepared to possibly, definitely walk a little bit, possibly a little bit to get to the site, but not too far, and to experience, get a chance to experience with a guide, somebody leading you through and kind of sensing. You get that change. You get that, that lushness of that little strip of beach grass and forest as you're going to the lake. And so oftentimes we tend to be visually focused as people and as a culture, and so this is a chance to kind of short circuit that, so that we can really perceive with our other senses. And of course we're interested particularly in hearing, but also the tactile and the smells and everything else. And it starts at 6 p.m. That's the plan. And it goes, for how long it goes, but probably, a couple hours. And that's the kind of plan. And what great timing, because it seems that as we speak, our visiting guest artists in the Tentacles, you have Jennifer Beatty coming to us from North Carolina. In the Squid Hat, you have Uri Koish, who's coming to us from Miami, Florida. And we're very happy to have them. This has been a dream. They're dear friends, and it's their first time for both of them in Duluth. Last night was their first chance to see Lake Superior, and it's been super fun just to introduce that and to see it through fresh eyes again, and kind of like get their take.
Okay, a little bit more forward. A little bit more forward. Right, good.
Well, hello.
Chair.
Welcome.
Scoot a little more.
Thank you for joining us. And so again, as we're getting situated here, I just want to say that Jen and Uri come to us as with many facets of their creative and performance practice, but among that and amongst what we'll get to experience is their collaboration called the Committed Duo. And I'll let maybe Jen tell us a little bit about what the Committed Duo is. And Uri, building upon that, what would you have to add about some of the things that you're up to together? Fantastic. Nate, do you have any questions you'd like to ask the two of them?
Nothing is coming to mind right away, with the exception of the fact that at least one of the sounds we just heard actually was fairly reminiscent of some of the things that we'd heard previously underwater when we were when Rosalind Putland was putting mics to the different fish and the different so yeah. I wonder if you might address a little bit about the sounds that you've chosen. See how low it is?
Fantastic. And I wonder, could you talk about like what kinds of rehearsal preparation sort of practices go into a performance like this? I believe, I mean, you've performed in a variety of contexts, but this is the first time in definitely at Lake Superior, but in cold water and sort of taking this into the elements. What kinds of yeah, just what kind of preparation and rehearsal goes into that kind of event? All right. Well, do you have any other questions or things to add? I think we might be at a time where I don't know if there'll be any questions, but I'll turn it over to you, Nate. Thank you again for having us. And again, we're super excited to have the committed duo with us. And we hope as many of you out there can join us tomorrow as possible. But I'll let you direct it from here.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe final question, and any of you feel free to answer. So the final question I have is sort of what vision do you have for this event moving forward? What would you want to how do you want to see this sort of evolve, or yeah, do you have a vision in mind for where you want to see Sub Superior go? We've mentioned that this is sort of prototype years, getting things figured out, and so yeah, what's the vision?
We have a vision that Hexus will grow. We'll take on more homesteaders in the years to come, lakesteaders, and we imagine that maybe not right next year, but in the next few years, we imagine having probably a cluster of, say, dozens of hexagons that are capable of sustaining themselves with photovoltaics and other self-generating, regenerative kinds of support systems on board so that we can take Sub-Superior around the lake. And, really its home base will always be Duluth, but, you could imagine going to Marquette and Houghton and Grand Marais, both in Michigan and in Minnesota, and beyond. And so that's and that's a good starting point, I think, for the future. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Troy. Thank you, committed duo. Thank you, Daniel Benoit, who's been running the tech for us. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. And come on out tomorrow night. The plan is 6 o'clock, Park Point. And also, yeah, check out the website to get updates based on weather and everything else. And yeah, thanks for coming out. Troy, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And we're done.